The great chamber of the Galactic Council had seen many things in its 10,000 years of existence. It had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. It had watched species join the stars and others fade into extinction. But it had never seen anything like what happened on that cold morning when the human ambassador stood up and walked toward the door. Ambassador. Caroline Webb was a small woman by galactic standards. The Xanthari towered over her with their massive scaled bodies. The Sylvians floated above her with their glowing tentacles. Even the mechanical forms of the Korvathi collective made her look tiny and fragile. But there was nothing fragile about the look in her eyes as she turned to face the assembled representatives. Of 47 species, I have served as humanity's voice in this chamber for 12 years, she said. Her voice was calm and steady, the kind of calm that comes not from peace, but from a decision already made. My predecessor served for 15 years before me, and his predecessor for 20 years before that. For nearly 5 decades, humanity has sat in this chamber and played by your rules. High Arbiter Kelvaxis shifted his enormous body on his hovering platform. He was the leader of the Xanthari Dominion, the oldest and most powerful member of the Council. His 4 eyes narrowed as he studied the human woman. Ambassador Webb, if this is about the recent unpleasantness in the Helix Corridor, I assure you that our investigation is proceeding with all appropriate speed. Carolyn laughed. It was not a happy sound. The recent unpleasantness? Is that what we are calling it now? She reached into her coat and pulled out a small holographic projector. With a click, images filled the air above the council chamber. Images of burning ships. Images of debris floating in the cold darkness of space. Images of bodies, some of them very small, drifting among the wreckage. 3 colony ships, Carolyn said. The new horizon. The bright future. The children of Earth. Her voice cracked slightly on the last name. 14,000 human beings, including 4,000 children, were on those ships. They were traveling to establish new homes on worlds that this council assigned to us. They were not military vessels. They carried no weapons. They were families looking for a better life. Delegate Moreth of the Sylvian Confederacy extended her tentacles in a gesture of sympathy. We all mourn this tragedy, Ambassador. But surely you understand that finding those responsible takes time. The Helix Corridor is a lawless region. Pirates and raiders operate freely there. We cannot simply. What? Carolyn cut her off. Cannot simply protect civilian ships in a region you control? Cannot simply investigate an attack that happened 11 months ago? Cannot simply hold anyone accountable for the murder of 14,000 innocent people? She turned off the holographic projector and placed it back in her coat. Then she pulled out something else. A small crystal chip that glowed with soft blue light. This is the official declaration of the United Earth Federation, she said. As of this moment, humanity is withdrawing from all treaties, agreements, and diplomatic arrangements with the Galactic Council and its member species. All human ambassadors, trade representatives, scientists, and citizens currently residing in Council space have been ordered to return to Earth territory. Immediately, the chamber erupted into chaos. Kelvaxis slammed his ceremonial staff against his platform so hard that the sound echoed through the vast room. You cannot do this. The Compact of Species specifically forbids unilateral withdrawal. There are procedures, negotiations, cooling-off periods. The Compact of Species also forbids the targeting of civilian vessels, Caroline replied. She was already walking toward the exit. It forbids attacks on colony ships. It forbids the murder of children. Yet here we are, 11 months later, and not a single being has faced justice. She stopped at the door and looked back. Humanity joined this council because we believed in cooperation. We believed in shared goals and mutual respect. We believed that the galaxy could be better than the cruel universe that spawned us. Her eyes swept across the assembled delegates. Some looked angry. Some looked confused. A few, she noticed, looked afraid. Those were the smart ones. We were wrong, she said simply. Goodbye. The doors closed behind her with a sound like a tomb sealing shut. Within hours, the withdrawal had begun across the galaxy. On 100 different worlds, human diplomats closed their offices and packed their belongings. On research stations and trade posts, human scientists and merchants said goodbye to colleagues they had worked with for years. On the agricultural world of Kestrel 4, trade liaison Daniel Porter stood in his office for the last time. Outside his window, he could see the vast grain fields that stretched to the horizon. Those fields grew crops that human scientists had developed specifically for Xanthari soil. Without human expertise, those crops would fail within a few seasons. His Xanthari counterpart, a merchant named Velthos, stood in the doorway with confusion written across his scaled face. "I do not understand," Velthos said. "We have worked together for 8 years. We are friends. Why must you leave?" Daniel picked up the last of his personal items and placed them in his bag. "Because friendship only works when both sides value it equally," he said. "When 14,000 of our people died, your government spent more effort covering it up than finding those responsible. That tells us everything we need to know about how much our friendship is worth to you." He walked past Velthos without looking back. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On Nexus 7, Dr. Michelle Grant disconnected from the Joint Scientific Database, taking with her decades of human research on faster-than-light travel that had been freely shared with Council species. On the diplomatic station above Corinth Prime, Commander Samuel Price ordered his crew to prepare for immediate departure, ignoring the frantic hails from station authorities, demanding to know what was happening. And in the council chamber on Volantis Prime, the representatives of 47 species sat in stunned silence as they tried to understand what had just happened. Sage Ulthrix of the Wandering Peoples, an ancient being who had observed galactic politics for longer than most species had existed, finally broke the silence with a dry chuckle. "Well," Ulthrix said, "that could have gone better." Kelvaxis turned his massive head toward the old sage. "This is not amusing. The humans are behaving like children throwing a tantrum. They will calm down in time and return to the negotiating table, will they?" Ulthrix asked. "Tell me, High Arbiter, what do you actually know about humans? Not what your diplomats have reported. Not what your intelligence services have assumed. What do you truly know about the species that just walked out of this chamber?" Kelvaxis waved a dismissive claw. "They are young, emotional. They have been in space for barely 3 centuries. They will learn that the galaxy does not bend to fit their desires." Ulthrix smiled, an expression that looked strange on a face that was mostly eyes and wrinkled skin. "The galaxy may not bend to their desires," the sage said quietly, "but I would not be so certain that the humans will bend to yours. They are not what they appear to be, High Arbiter. They never have been." Outside the chamber, Ambassador Caroline Webb boarded her shuttle and transmitted a single coded message to Earth. It read simply, "It has begun." The galaxy was about to learn a very hard lesson about humanity. And by the time that lesson was over, nothing would ever be the same again. 6 months had passed since the humans walked away, and the galaxy was beginning to fall apart. High Arbiter Kelvaxis stood before an emergency session of the Galactic Council. He looked tired. His scales, once bright green with health, had faded to a sickly gray. The reports piling up on his desk grew worse every day, and he had stopped sleeping more than a few hours at a time. "The situation is critical," he announced to the assembled delegates. "Xanthari agricultural output has dropped by 40%. The grain hybrids that humans developed for our soil require specific maintenance techniques. Without their scientists to guide us, our crops are dying." Delegate Morith, of the Sylvian Confederacy, floated forward, her bioluminescent tentacles dim with stress. "Our medical systems are collapsing. Human pharmaceutical research formed the foundation of our 3 most common treatments. We cannot produce them ourselves. Our hospitals are rationing medicine. People are dying." One by one, other delegates added their voices to the chorus of despair. The Corvathi Collective reported that their manufacturing sector had lost access to human engineering patents. Factories that had produced goods for centuries were now sitting idle because no one understood how to maintain the human-designed equipment. The Morthian Empire admitted that their fleet was grounded. Human navigational software had been quietly integrated into their ships over decades of cooperation. Without updates and support, that software was failing, even the proud Kravenix hegemony. Species of predators who had always kept humans at arm's length confessed that their economy was struggling. Human entertainment media had become surprisingly popular among their young people. Its sudden disappearance had caused social unrest. How did we become so dependent on them? Morith asked, her voice carrying a note of genuine confusion. They are such a young species. They have only been among us for a few decades. Ambassador Zelith of the Kravenix hegemony rose from her seat. She was a tall being, Kov, aired in dark scales with eyes that seemed to absorb light. When she spoke, her voice was soft but carried easily through the chamber. Because we let them, she said. We saw a young species eager to please, eager to share, eager to prove their worth to the great powers of the galaxy. And we took advantage of that eagerness without ever stopping to think about what we were giving up in return. She walked to the center of the chamber, moving with the fluid grace of a born hunter. My people studied the humans when they first arrived. We recognized something in them, something familiar. She paused, letting the silence build. They are predators. Apex predators from a death world that should have killed them 1,000 times over. But they learned to hide that nature behind soft smiles and open hands. Admiral Vexer of the Morthian Empire snorted with contempt. You give them too much credit. They are soft creatures. They needed our protection to survive in the galaxy. Did they? Zelith asked. She activated a holographic display showing human space. In the 6 months since their withdrawal, not a single human world has been attacked. Not a single human ship has been raided. Not a single human citizen has been harmed. She zoomed in on the border regions. Meanwhile, pirate activity in the Helix Corridor has dropped to zero. The raiders who once terrorized that region have simply vanished. Gone, as if they never existed. Kelvoxis leaned forward. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting, Zelith said, that the pirates who destroyed those colony ships were never independent actors. I am suggesting that someone powerful wanted those ships destroyed and used convenient criminals to do it. And I am suggesting that the humans know exactly who was responsible. The chamber fell silent. That is a very serious accusation, Morith said carefully. It is not an accusation, Zelith replied. It is an observation. The humans are not stupid. They have intelligence services just as capable as ours. Perhaps more capable, since they seem to have seen through deceptions that we assumed were perfect. She turned to face Kelvaxis directly. Tell me, High Arbiter. When your investigators reported that they could find no evidence of who attacked those ships, did you actually believe them? Or did you simply accept their conclusions because the alternative was too uncomfortable to consider? Kelvaxis said nothing. His silence was answer enough. In the weeks that followed, the economic situation continued to deteriorate. Species that had traded freely with humans for decades suddenly found themselves without access to goods they had come to depend on. Supply chains that had seemed robust revealed themselves to be fragile networks held together by human innovation. On the Zenthari homeworld, food riots broke out in 3 major cities. The government was forced to deploy military forces to maintain order, something that had not happened in over 1,000 years in Sylvian space. Hospitals began turning away patients who could not be treated. Diseases that had been easily curable a year ago were now death sentences. The Corvathi Collective, normally the most logical and emotionless of species, began to show signs of genuine distress. Their shared consciousness was struggling to process a future that their calculations said should not exist. And throughout it all, the humans remained silent. No ambassadors came forward to negotiate. No trade representatives offered to restore economic ties. No scientists proposed sharing their knowledge again. The humans simply went about their business in their own space. As if the rest of the galaxy did not exist, Sagel Thrix requested a private meeting with High Arbiter Kelvaxis. The two of them sat in a small room far from the council chamber, surrounded by the soft glow of ancient lighting systems. You wanted to talk? Kelvaxis said. He sounded exhausted. I wanted to warn you, Ulthrix replied. The wandering peoples have seen many empires rise and fall. We have watched civilizations destroy themselves through arrogance and short-sightedness, and we recognize the signs of what is happening now. What do you mean? Ulthrix leaned forward. The humans did not become dependent on us. We became dependent on them. And we did it so gradually, so comfortably, that we never noticed until it was too late. The old sage paused, gathering thoughts that were older than most species. They shared their innovations freely because they wanted to be accepted. They solved our problems because they wanted to help. They asked for nothing in return, except friendship and respect. And when we failed to give them even that, when we allowed their children to be murdered and did nothing, they simply stopped sharing. So they are punishing us, Kelvaxis said bitterly. No, Ulthrix shook their heads slowly. They are not punishing you. They are simply no longer protecting you from the consequences of your own choices. For decades, human kindness covered for our failures. Now that kindness is gone, and we are left with nothing but ourselves. Kelvaxis stared at the ancient being for a long moment. What do you suggest we do? I suggest you find out what really happened in the Helix corridor, Ulthrix said. And I suggest you be very, very careful about what you discover, because the humans already know the truth, and they are waiting to see if you have the courage to face it. The old sage rose and walked toward the door. One more thing, High Arbiter. The humans have a saying from their history. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. Ulthrix paused at the threshold. So far, the humans have been peaceful. I would not recommend testing their patience much further. The door closed, leaving Kelvaxis alone with his thoughts and his fears. Somewhere in the darkness of space, far from the Council's reach, humanity was building something. The High Arbiter did not know what it was. He was not sure he wanted to find out. 1 year after the withdrawal, Commander Lysara of the Zenthari Scout Corps received orders that would change her understanding of the galaxy forever. Her mission was simple. On paper, take her small scout vessel to the edge of human space. Observe their defenses. Report back on their military capabilities. The Council needed information. Information required eyes in places where eyes were not welcome. Lysara was a veteran of 30 years in the Scout Corps. She had mapped uncharted star systems. She had observed hostile species without detection. She had survived encounters with pirates and raiders that would have killed less skilled commanders. She believed there was nothing in the galaxy that could truly surprise her. Anymore, she was wrong. The journey to the human border took 3 weeks at maximum speed. During that time, Lysara studied everything the Council knew about human military forces. It was not much. The humans had always maintained a small defense fleet, just enough to protect their colonies from the occasional pirate raid. Their ships were functional and practical, designed more for exploration than combat. Their weapons were adequate, but not impressive, at least. That was what the report said, as her vessel approached the boundary of human-controlled space. Lysara ordered her crew to reduce speed and activate their stealth systems. Zenthari scout ships were among the best in the galaxy. Their sensor-dampening technology could fool even the most advanced detection arrays, or so she thought. Commander, her sensor officer said, his voice carrying an unusual tremor. You need to see this. Lysara moved to the sensor station and looked at the display. For a long moment, she could not understand what she was seeing. Then, understanding came, and with it, fear. The space before them was not empty. It was fortified beyond anything she had ever witnessed. Massive defense platforms hung in the darkness, like sleeping giants. Each one was larger than a Morthian battleship. Each one bristled with weapon systems that her sensors could not fully identify. Between them stretched networks of sensor buoys, overlapping fields of detection that covered every approach vector and the ships. They emerged from the darkness like predators, revealing themselves to prey. Long, angular vessels painted in colors that seemed to drink the starlight. No running lights. No identification markers. Just sleek hulls covered in weapon ports that promised swift and efficient destruction. By the ancestors, Lysara whispered, "Right, Commander." I am detecting over 200 ships in this sector alone, her sensor officer reported. His voice was shaking now. and my long-range scans suggest this is only one of dozens of similar defensive positions along the border. Lasara did the math in her head. If what she was seeing was representative of the entire border, then the humans had assembled a fleet larger than any force in galactic history. Larger than the Morthian Empire at the height of its power. Larger than all the Council species combined. How is this possible? She asked. Our intelligence said they had only a few hundred ships total. Our intelligence was wrong, her second officer said quietly. Or our intelligence was deceived. Before Lasara could respond, alarms began screaming throughout the ship. Something had detected them. Something was coming. The human vessel materialized from nothing. One moment the space beside them was empty. The next moment, a warship 3 times their size hung in the darkness, its weapons powered and ready. Xanthari vessel, a calm voice said over their communications array. You're in restricted space. Reverse course immediately. You will not receive another warning. Lasara's hands trembled as she keyed the response channel. We were merely observing. We meant no intrusion. We will leave immediately. There was a long pause. Then the voice spoke again. You have 5 minutes. Lasara ordered maximum speed. Her crew did not need to be told twice. Back in council space, she delivered her report to an emergency session. The holographic recordings she had captured played on the main display, showing the massed human fleet in terrifying detail. This construction did not happen overnight, Lasara said. The infrastructure I observed represents decades of work. The shipyards, the defense platforms, the weapons systems. They were building this long before the Helix Corridor incident, perhaps long before any of us realized it. Admiral Vexer rose to his feet, his tusks gleaming with anger. Impossible. Our spies would have detected construction on this scale, would they? Ambassador Zelith asked. Think about it carefully, Admiral. For decades, humans have had access to our technology, our systems, our networks. They know how our sensors work. They know how our intelligence services operate. They know our blind spots because they helped us identify them. She gestured at the holographic display. Those ships are using stealth technology that our sensors cannot fully penetrate. That defense network is designed specifically to counter our tactical doctrines. Every aspect of what we see here was built by beings who knew exactly what they would be facing. The Corvathi Collective spoke through their shared voice. We've analyzed the sensor data provided by Commander Lysera. Based on the energy signatures detected, we estimate that a single human defense platform could disable an entire Morthian battle group in approximately 4 minutes. The fleet we have observed could destroy every military vessel in Council space and still have reserves remaining. Then we attack now, Vexer growled. Before they grow even stronger, attack with what? Delegate Morith asked. Our ships cannot reach them. Our weapons cannot penetrate their defenses. Our fleets are grounded because we cannot navigate without their software. Sage Ulthrix spoke from the corner where the ancient being always sat. Did I not tell you? They are survivors. Planners. They came to the galaxy hoping for friends, but prepared for enemies. They showed us their gentle face, because it cost them nothing and gained them everything. Now they are showing us their true face. What do they want? Kilvaxis demanded. If they have this power, why have they not used it? Why have they not demanded our surrender? Because they do not want your surrender, Zelith said. They want something far more difficult to give. She paused, letting the tension build. They want the truth. The chamber fell silent. The truth about what really happened in the Helix Corridor, Zelith continued. The truth about why their children died. The truth about who was responsible and why no one has been punished. And if we give them this truth, Morith asked quietly, then perhaps there is still a chance for peace, Zelith said. But if we continue to lie, continue to hide, continue to pretend that we do not know what happened, she shook her head slowly, then I suspect we will learn exactly what human anger looks like. And I do not think any of us will enjoy that lesson. Far away in human space, Ambassador Caroline Webb stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel Endeavour. Through the viewport, she could see the gathered might of humanity's fleet. Ships that had been built in secret, ships that had never been shown to any alien species, Ships that represented decades of preparation for a day that humanity had hoped would never come. Captain. Samuel Price stood beside her. The Zenthari scout returned to Council space, he said. They know what we have now. Carolyn nodded slowly. Good. It is time for them to understand exactly what they are dealing with. She turned away from the viewport. The question is whether they will be smart enough to give us what we actually want, or stupid enough to force us to take it. And what do we actually want? Samuel asked. Justice, Caroline said simply. Just justice. It was never a complicated request. She walked toward the door. But for some species, it seems to be the most difficult thing in the universe to provide. The fleet hung in the darkness behind her, waiting, patient, ready. Humanity had spent 60 years trying to make friends. Now they would see if the galaxy was capable of being honest. If not, there were other options. 2 years after the withdrawal, the truth finally emerged from the lips of a dying man. Former Intelligence Director Vathros of the Zenthari. Dominion lay in a private medical chamber, his body failing after 500 years of life. The machines around him beeped softly, counting down the final hours of an existence that had seen empires rise and fall. But his mind remained clear, clear enough to feel the weight of guilt that had pressed down on him for 2 long years, clear enough to know that he could not die without confessing what he had done. I need to speak with the council, he told his attendants. Call them. All of them, before it is too late. The emergency session was called within the hour. Representatives from all 47 species gathered in the great chamber. Curious and confused about why a dying intelligence director would demand their attention, Hi, Arbiter Kelvaxis stood at the podium, looking down at the holographic projection of Vathros that flickered in the center of the room. You requested this audience, he said. The council is listening. Vathros coughed, a wet sound that spoke of lungs failing and time running out. What I am about to tell you will change everything, he said. Some of you already know what I will say. Others have suspected, but all of you need to hear it spoken aloud, so that there can be no more hiding from the truth. He paused, gathering what remained of his strength. The Helix Corridor incident was not an accident. It was not the work of pirates. It was not an attack by unknown enemies. His voice grew stronger as if the confession itself was giving him energy. It was a planned operation, proved by the Zenthari High Command, with the full knowledge and support of 6 other council species. The chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates shouted denials. Some demanded that Vathros be silenced. Others called for evidence. The noise grew so loud that Kelvaxis had to slam his ceremonial staff against the podium repeatedly before order was restored. These are serious accusations, Kelvaxis said, though his voice lacked conviction. Do you have proof? I was the one who planned it, Vathros replied simply. I chose the targets. I hired the mercenaries who posed as pirates. I provided them with the intelligence they needed to intercept those colony ships in a region with no witnesses. And I destroyed all evidence of our involvement. He coughed again, and this time blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. Bid, but why? Delegate Morith demanded. Her tentacles had turned a sickly pale color. Why would you attack civilians? Why would you kill children? Because you told me to, Vathros said, his eyes moving to find her in the crowd. You and 6 others. You came to me with your concerns about human expansion. You told me that their population was growing too fast. Their technology was advancing too quickly. Their economic influence was threatening your trade monopolies. He laughed bitterly, spraying blood across his pillow. You wanted to send them a message. Slow them down. Make them afraid. And you chose colony ships because attacking military targets would have provoked immediate retaliation. The chamber had gone deathly quiet. We thought they would be scared, Vathros continued. We thought they would pull back, reduce their expansion, become more dependent on council protection. We did not understand them at all. His eyes closed for a moment, then opened again with visible effort. The humans figured out what we did within 6 months of the attack. Their intelligence services are far more capable than we ever realized. They knew who was responsible. They knew who gave the orders. They knew everything. Then why did they not confront us? Kelvoxis asked. Because they wanted us to confess on our own, Vathros said. They wanted us to prove that we were capable of honesty and accountability. They gave us a chance to do the right thing. Another cough, weaker this time. And we failed. We lied. We covered up. We pretended to investigate while burying every piece of evidence. And with every lie, we proved to them exactly what we are. Silence hung over the chamber like a funeral shroud. The humans are not angry because we killed their people, Vathros said, his voice barely above a whisper now. They are angry because we proved that their trust in us was misplaced. They are angry because they wanted to believe we were better than we are. And they are angry because we showed them that the galaxy they hoped for does not exist. He took one last shuddering breath. I am sorry. I am sorry for what I did. I am sorry for the lives I took. And I am sorry that my confession comes so late. His eyes closed. Perhaps the humans will find it in themselves to forgive us. But I would not blame them if they did not. The machines around him let out a long, steady tone. Intelligence Director Vathros of the Zenthari Dominion was dead. In the silence that followed, the delegates looked at each other with new eyes. Some with suspicion, some with fear. Some with dawning horror as they recognized their own complicity in what had happened. We must tell the humans, Kelvaxis said finally. We must confess everything and beg for mercy. Mercy? Admiral Vexer laughed harshly. You think they will show mercy after learning we murdered their children? We should prepare for war. There will be no war, said a voice from the entrance. Every head turned. Ambassador Caroline Webb stood in the doorway, flanked by two human soldiers in dark armor. Behind her, the holographic seal of the United Earth Federation glowed with cold blue light. Her face was calm, but her eyes held something that made even the bravest delegates look away. You have been listening, Zeleth observed, unsurprised. We have been listening for quite some time, Caroline confirmed. She walked to the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the silence. We knew about the conspiracy within 6 months of the attack. We identified every species that participated. We documented every decision, every order, every payment. She stopped in front of the podium and looked up at Kelvaxis. We gave you 2 years to tell the truth on your own. 2 years to prove that this council was capable of accountability. 2 years to show us that our faith in galactic civilization was not completely misplaced. And now, Kelvaxis asked quietly. And now the truth has finally been spoken, Carolyn said. Not because you chose to be honest, but because a dying man could no longer bear the weight of his guilt. She shook her head slowly. It is not the confession we hoped for, but it will have to do. Delegate Moreth floated forward. What happens now? Will you attack us? Will you demand our surrender? Caroline looked at her for a long moment. You know what the hardest part of the last 2 years has been? It was not the economic damage. It was not the isolation. It was not even the grief for our lost people. She paused. It was knowing that you killed our children and choosing not to respond in kind. The chamber was absolutely silent. We could have destroyed you, Caroline said simply. We could have turned your worlds to ash and your species to memories. We have the power. We have the justification. And believe me, there are many humans who have demanded exactly that. She turned to face the entire council. But that is not who we want to be. We came to the stars looking for friends, not enemies. We wanted to be part of something greater than ourselves. We will not let your cruelty turn us into monsters. Then what do you want? Kelvaxis asked. Caroline smiled, but there was no joy in it. We want to talk, but this time we will be talking on our terms. She turned and walked toward the exit. At the doorway, she paused and looked back. The humans will return to this council, she said, but not as beggars seeking acceptance. Not as children hoping for approval. We will return as equals, or we will not return at all. The choice is yours. The doors closed behind her, leaving the council alone with their guilt and their fear. For the first time in galactic history, the great powers of the universe had been put in their place by a species they had dismissed as young and foolish. The age of human patience was over. What came next would determine the future of the galaxy. 3 years after the withdrawal, the galaxy stood at a crossroads between destruction and hope. The council chamber on Volantis Prime had changed. Old delegates who had participated in the Helix Corridor conspiracy were gone, removed from power by their own species, or arrested to face trial for their crimes. In their place sat new representatives. Younger beings chosen specifically because they had opposed the old ways. High Arbiter Kelvaxis had resigned in disgrace. His replacement, Arbiter Selene, was a reformer who had spent her entire career fighting against the corruption that had nearly destroyed galactic civilization. She was the first female to hold the position in Zenthari history. She intended to make that history count. Admiral Vexer of the Morthian Empire sat in chains in a military prison, awaiting trial for his role in the massacre. So did 47 other high-ranking officials from 7 different species. For the first time in galactic history, the powerful were being held accountable for their crimes against the weak, and Ambassador Caroline Webb had returned to Volantis Prime. She stood at the podium where she had delivered her farewell speech 3 years earlier. But everything else was different now. The faces looking up at her were different. The mood in the chamber was different. Even the light seemed different, as if the ancient room had been cleansed of shadows that had lingered for too long. Humanity has spent 3 years considering our options, Carolyn said. Her voice was calm and measured, but it carried easily through the vast chamber. We could have demanded territory. We could have insisted on reparations that would have crippled your economies for generations. We could have used the secrets we uncovered to destroy what remains of this council entirely. Letting her words settle over the assembled delegates, we chose not to. Murmur ran through the chamber. Some delegates looked relieved. Others looked confused. A few looked suspicious, as if waiting for the other shoe to drop. The beings who ordered the deaths of our people have been exposed, Carolyn continued. They will face justice within their own legal systems. The conspiracy has been laid bare for the entire galaxy to see, and every species that participated in the attack has acknowledged their responsibility and apologized to the families of those who died. She reached into her coat and pulled out a familiar sight, a crystal data chip that glowed with soft blue light. This is humanity's proposal for a new relationship with the galactic community, she said. Not the old treaties that allowed powerful species to exploit weaker ones without consequence. Not the diplomatic games that treated mass murder as an acceptable political tool. Something different. Something better. She placed the chip on the podium. We are proposing a new compact. A framework built on genuine equality, transparent governance, and real consequences for those who violate its principles. No more secret plots. No more backroom deals. No more powerful species treating weaker ones as expendable. Arbiter Selene examined the document that appeared on her display. Her eyes widened as she read through the proposals. This is extensive, she said. You are asking for fundamental changes to how the Council operates. You're asking for the Council to become what it always claimed to be, Caroline replied. A place where species work together for mutual benefit. A place where disputes are resolved through dialogue, not violence. A place where the strong protects the weak instead of preying upon them. Delegate Karath, of the Sylvian Confederacy, raised a tentacle. And if we refuse, if we decide that your terms are too demanding, then we continue as we are, Caroline said simply. Humanity has proven we can survive without the galaxy. We have proven we can prosper in isolation. We have proven we can defend ourselves against any threat. She smiled, and this time there was warmth in it. But survival is not the same as living. Prosperity is not the same as happiness. And strength is not the same as having someone to share it with. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each delegate in turn. We would rather be your partners than your rivals. We would rather build together than fortify against each other. We would rather see our children grow up in a galaxy of friends than a galaxy of enemies. Her voice softened. That is what we wanted from the beginning. That is what we still want now. The question is whether you are ready to build it with us. The debate lasted for 3 months. Every article of the new compact was examined. Every provision was discussed. Every concern was addressed. Human negotiators proved as patient in building peace as they had been in preparing for war. Some species resisted the changes. They argued that the old ways had served them well. Their power and privilege should not be sacrificed for abstract ideals of equality. But the memory of what had happened, the economic collapse, the exposure of corruption, the sight of once proud leaders in chains made their arguments ring hollow. In the end, 39 of the 47 council species signed the new compact. The 8 who refused were not punished or threatened. They were simply left to go their own way, free to rejoin whenever they chose to accept the terms. On the day the compact was ratified, a great ceremony was held in the council chamber. Representatives from every signing species gathered to witness the moment that would mark the beginning of a new era. Captain Samuel Price watched the ceremony from the observation gallery above the chamber floor. Beside him stood Dr. Michelle Grant, trade liaison Daniel Porter, and a dozen other humans who had been part of the withdrawal 3 years earlier. "Do you think it will last?" Michelle asked quietly. Samuel considered the question carefully. "Nothing lasts forever," he said finally. "Species change. Governments rise and fall. Even the best intentions can fade over time." He paused. "But that is not the point." "What is the point?" "The point is to build something worth protecting," Samuel said. "Something that makes the universe a little less dark and a little less lonely. Something that gives our children a reason to hope." "Lotham," Ambassador Caroline Webb shook hands with Arbiter Selena as holocameras captured the moment for 1 trillion watching beings across the galaxy. The new compact was signed. The old ways were officially dead, and if it fails, Michelle pressed. If someone forgets the lessons of the Helix Corridor, if another species decides to test our patience, Samuel smiled, a hard expression that reminded everyone watching that humanity had not forgotten how to fight. Then we will be here to remind them. We will always be here, hoping for peace, but prepared for anything. Far away, on the human homeworld called Earth, a memorial stood in a quiet garden. 14,000 names were carved into black stone, each one representing a life that had been stolen by the cruelty of those who should have been friends. Families came to visit that memorial. They brought flowers and letters and memories of the people they had lost. They wept for husbands and wives, parents and children, friends and lovers who would never come home. But they also brought something else. They brought hope, because humanity had been hurt badly. They had been betrayed by those they trusted. They had been pushed to the edge of a war that would have consumed the galaxy in fire and death, and they had chosen another path. Not because they were weak, not because they were afraid, but because they understood something that their enemies had forgotten. The true measure of a species is not in how fiercely they can fight. It is in how gracefully they can forgive. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity. Now they would learn to trust them, and that, in the end, was the greatest victory of all. The stars still burned in the endless darkness. The galaxy still turned through the void. But something had changed. Something fundamental and precious and fragile. For the first time in 10,000 years of galactic civilization, there was genuine hope for a better future. Humanity had given the universe a second chance. What the galaxy did with that chance would determine everything that came after.